One of the most baffling moves that's come out in the last few weeks with regards to gaming in general has been the announcement from some executives over at Warner Brothers. Now, Warner Brothers has been struggling a little bit. Warner Brothers Discovery is the parent company that owns Rocksteady, owns all the DC stuff. They've, in general, been having sort of a rough go of it recently for a number of reasons. I mean, not only is like television advertising dropping, film advertising and film box office performance has not been great for most groups besides like Dune has been successful. I think Dune is actually a Warner Brothers IP, is it not? Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I think it is. Anyway, but in general, Warner Brothers Discovery has been struggling to maintain steady performance and steady financial performance. So they have been talking at various investor conferences and events, trying to calm investors down. Because if we look up Warner Brothers stock, enhance. Okay. If we do this and we go back like, let's just go back 3 years. I'm not a mathematician, but this from like January or this is probably like January of 21. This is a downward slope. This is in the downward direction. Dare I say dropping. Moving in a southern funnel. Slant. Ski slope, whatever you want to call it, okay? This is high-level financial analysis I'm providing you, okay? So they've not been doing too hot. Line go down. Exactly, Whitest Rabbit. Line go down. And you said you're not a mathematician. Down means good, right? No. This is why we break it down. It can get confusing. If you turn it upside down, line go up. You are right. Anyway, so the line's been going down. They've been struggling, and people have been, investors especially, have been a little frustrated with it. Whether you look at Series A stock, Series B stock, like people have in general been quite frustrated with it. There's a lot of short interest in the stock, which means that there's a lot of negativity around it. The beta is in line with the market generally, but I mean, all told, they're not doing too hot. And in fact, on a quarterly basis, they're losing like $1.28 per share, which, also not a mathematician, losing money per share is the opposite of what you want to do. So they've been speaking with investors, trying to quell concerns. And one of the things that they've been doing is going to these big institutional investors where they hold events and they give talks. Executives give talks. And, you know, an example of that is like Morgan Stanley. They host events. Vanguard, BlackRock will host events. And they'll invite executives from these companies on to basically tell everybody why you shouldn't give up on us and why you should invest with us. So the reason that's important is because you need to understand the audience to which these executives are speaking, because the messaging is very particular in those instances compared to if they were talking directly to like gamers or directly to film buffs or this or that. In this interview though, Warner Brothers Discovery gaming boss JB Perrette said on the company's future strategy, quote, "We're doubling down on games as an area where we think there's a lot more growth opportunity that we can tap into with the IP that we have, and some of the capabilities we have on the studio where we're uniquely positioned as both a publisher and a developer of games. Rather than just launch a one-and-done console games, how do we develop a game around, for example, a Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter that is a live service where people can live and work and build and play in that world in an ongoing basis." So here's the deal. This initial part, I agree. Gaming is a huge business, and if you produce high quality games that people want to play, they'll buy it in droves, as we saw with like 22, 23 million people purchasing copies of Hogwarts Legacy, making it the most successful game in terms of units sold in 2023, beating out even the likes of like Call of Duty, which is almost unheard of. So this is true. I do think Warner Brothers Discovery is uniquely positioned. They can publish their own games, which saves them money and increases margin. They develop the games themselves, and they have some phenomenal world-class studios under their umbrella that they can use to develop those games. So they have seemingly both parts they need. They have the studio and the talent, and they have the distribution. Both things you need to make a perfect sphere of success, and boom, you just made $1 billion on Hogwarts Legacy. Well, they're taking that and deciding, how can we do better? How do we take Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter and turn that into a live service to generate more revenue? Like, he doesn't say that. People can live and work and build and play in that world in an ongoing basis. Why that's something you need is kind of the big question mark. Clearly, it's because they want to have the ability to release like weekly or monthly cosmetics. Now, there are a couple of ways that this could go, just to be clear. There's the way that perhaps they're going where it's like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, or I'm sorry.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
You could go that route, which was basically a single player game that was massive, too big for its own good, in my opinion, and that was supported for like 2 full years. And that support was awesome. That allowed them to do cosmetics and little spin-off things, free updates and new modes for the game. And I know I bash Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Plenty, because I think the game is too big for its own good and it was built around wasting a lot of players' time, blah, blah, blah. I've been through it before, including in a 3-hour critique. But I will give Ubisoft credit that they released cosmetics. Some of them did affect gameplay in certain ways, but it certainly was not like game breaking, and it's single player, so it's not that big of a deal compared to like a co-op game. And beyond that, they offered a lot of free updates and new game modes that very few single players get. So the game that you could play right now in the form of Assassin's Creed Valhalla is very different and way bigger than the game you got back when the game launched in 2020, which is cool. That's cool. So I do think that they deserve a little bit of credit for that. So I want to play perhaps devil's advocate a little bit. This doesn't necessarily mean that Hogwarts Legacy 2 is going to be a live service travesty full of microtransactions. It's going to be Suicide Squad 2.0 and it's just going to be a disaster. I don't think that's necessarily a given. We've seen some suggestions saying that they might shift and change approach, but nothing's confirmed right now. Nacho Muriel asks with the super chat, are games as a service really working? I feel like a lot of them fail. Maybe just Helldivers is a success. Well, the old strategy has been for a long time to basically come out with a series of live service attempts and just see what sticks on the wall, because live service games can be so profitable that you can have 5 failures if you have 1 success. That's all you really need. And then that success is a success for years on end, which establishes recurrent revenues. And the thing with big corporations right now in the financial space we're in is that the name of the game is consistent, steady revenue. That's what they're looking for. That's why Microsoft has been chasing revenues, or rather subscription model revenue, as opposed to little spikes of revenue with individual releases. It's why Netflix has been doing that with their subscription models. It's why every major streaming service offers that instead of like, buy this TV show for $20 and you get the whole show. Easy, buy the whole season for $10 and then you have it. You don't have to pay anything extra for oncoming months. You want to watch just The Office on Peacock? Okay, just give us $50. You get the whole series of The Office. They don't do that because they can make a lot more with subscription revenue, where it's a smaller initial upfront cost to the user, but over time, it ends up being a lot more. And because it's an overtime thing, it happens every single month that they charge you, that makes their balance sheet much more reliable, and there's a lot less question. You know, there's a lot less risk involved. You'll hear in finance a lot of the time references to like a risk-free rate, which is sort of like if you look at something, let me pull this up. Usually what this is it's found through treasury rates, because in order for a treasury rate to not be paid out, the government of the United States would have to implode and financially collapse. So at that point, you have bigger problems. So usually the treasury rates are what you would look at. And how this is usually done is that there is a risk-free rate, and then there is the risk rate tacked on top of it, or, you know, that could be inflation. There's those adjustments kind of tacked on top. So you end up with the full like nominal rate on top of everything. But with this, like, as you get steady revenues coming in, the risk factor in that rate drops. In the same way, like if you have a credit score of 305, I think that like 300, I think is the lowest. Maybe it's not, but like you have a very low credit score, and then you go and you apply for a car loan, and the car loan's going to be $20,000, and you can put down, let's even say just $500 or something. You have very little to put down. You are a big risk. So their risk-free rate might just be like, okay, right now it's 4.99% for cars. Okay, that's the cheapest of the cheap debt. But then they look at you and you're a huge question mark. You're super high risk. They don't know if you're going to make your payment or not. So all of a sudden your rate is like 25%. It's like straight up a credit card loan on a car because there's such a big question mark as to whether they're actually going to get the money from you. And with companies, valuations happen similarly. If revenues are all over the place in some months and some quarters, they make crazy amounts of money, and then the next quarter they're losing tons of money. It's a huge question mark. And so investors are going to increase that risk rate effectively when they're balancing and pricing out how much the company's worth. And that usually ends up in the stock price being dropped, because when you're really risky, you're less valuable than a more reliable, or you're less valuable than a reliable company that consistently is making money. Yeah, 305. Yeah. The closer to 100. Yeah, it's like when somebody's like, yeah, I got my credit score back, scored 100. Perfect score, baby. Or like in Parks and Rec when Andy's like, yeah, I bought a motorcycle. I got a loan on it. Got 29% interest, which apparently is like one of the highest that they offer. So pretty cool. Just no idea what it means. But anyway, I want to just say, like, with all this, all of these companies are chasing consistent revenues. That's the name of the game. It's how you find ways to get investors really confident in your company if you have consistent revenues coming in. That's why investors love games like Fortnite. They love Call of Duty. They love Candy Crush, because every single quarter they bring in billions of dollars, and they don't take big releases, big marketing pushes or anything. They just kind of work. They just print money consistently over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's what they're trying to do over at Warner Brothers Discovery. What they go on to say is the move does come as somewhat of a surprise, considering that Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy was 2023's best-selling title, which is the first time a game has dethroned Call of Duty or a Rockstar game in over 15 years. By the end of 2023, Hogwarts Legacy achieved a sales milestone of 22 million copies sold. But that wasn't enough. In late 2023, Insider Gaming exclusively reported that Warner Brothers Discovery does have a live service Harry Potter game in development named Quidditch Champions. The game is a twist on the very popular Rocket League, where players need to score a ball in the hoops, but does offer fluid and fast-paced gameplay that does have a skill gap that players could come to enjoy. Late last year, Harry Potter Quidditch Champions had its biggest playtest yet, suggesting that the game could be nearing a release. And this was something people asked me if I went to the playtest, if I've tried the game. And what I would say to that is that if I did not participate, I would be able to very clearly tell you I did not participate. If I did, I certainly wouldn't tell you, because that would break NDAs and stuff. So I want to be clear. They have live service games in the Harry Potter franchise in the works. Okay. It's been reported. People have talked about it. It's been leaked even. People have talked about it. Okay. When he says that they want to find a way to get a Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter that's a live service, that could mean an additional game, not Hogwarts Legacy 2. It could be a spin-off game. There could be live service components to it, or it could be that Assassin's Creed Valhalla thing where they just release Hogwarts Legacy 2 and then they have like ongoing, hey, every season for fall, we're going to have a Halloween themed event and all new cosmetics you can purchase, and we're going to decorate the Wizarding World like Halloween, and it's going to be great, and there's going to be pumpkins everywhere, some new quests. That to me is just fine. I'd be okay with that. I can work with that. Live service, but it's a core single player game that's just high quality. That works. I'm happy with that. On the flip side, if this turns into trying to turn the Hogwarts Legacy into an MMO, I have more of a problem with that. So right now, everybody's freaking out about these comments from this executive, but I also want to remind everybody of the setting where he's giving these comments. What do investors love most in the gaming space? Live service games. That's what they love most. He's talking directly to investors who are pretty upset at Suicide Squad being a total flop and failing miserably and wasting hundreds of millions of dollars. And so how is he going to quell them? Well, we have things in the works that are going to generate billions, so don't stress it. We're just fine. We have things under control. It's just a matter of time before we release it. I would not be surprised if he's kind of playing a little bit with both sides. I don't think they're going to necessarily convert Hogwarts Legacy 2 into a full-on live service game, but I also would not be shocked at all if there are these Assassin's Creed Valhalla like mechanics and elements in it where there's paid cosmetics, where there's things like that, and then maybe seasonal updates or new quest lines for holidays and stuff. And I think that would be absolutely fine if they introduced a Halloween quest line where you fight like a magical pumpkin monster, and maybe it's like a they offer you some cosmetics that you can buy for $5 or $10 here and there if you want them. That to me, perfectly fine if the core game is good and they were given time to work on it. I think right now Avalanche does have a lot of saying power and a lot of control on the project, because they came along and offered Warner Brothers the biggest success, not just of the year in gaming, but also certainly in their gaming repertoire, probably ever. I think ever. I don't think there's ever been a time that Warner Brothers has ever had a successful game on that scale. So I think that if they say, no, we're not going live service, trust us, players liked our game for these reasons, we're going to double down on those. We can put cosmetics or seasonal updates and things in that. We can do DLC, but we're not going to scrap what people loved about the game. I think that they have a little bit more say than just being at the whims of the executives. At least they should. And so I'm confident that they will push back if they try to bend their arm and force them into something. Yeah, that's my impression. Is Suicide Squad drop the live service junk, or if Suicide Squad dropped the live service junk, lower the price to $40 and just focus on narrative in the wheelhouse of Rocksteady, they would have crushed it. Potential. I mean, dropping the live service would totally change the game, because the whole grind, the whole like weapon crafting system, all of that stuff is built around trying to pad out gameplay time. So I think the game would look very, very, very different. And honestly, they probably would not have chosen to do a Suicide Squad game if they had done that. My idea for it back in the day, I think, in my original critique of the Arkham series, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, yeah, I hope one day we get a Suicide Squad game. I thought we were going to get like a Suicide Squad game where they use the Nemesis system and like you were fighting up and coming superheroes, which could be kind of cool. Like I thought they were going to do something with that, but what we ended up getting was so much less exciting. So much less exciting. If most people vote with their wallets, Warner Brothers will abandon live service strategy. Yeah, it's just, I think Suicide Squad is a great example of voting with your wallet. Suicide Squad, by most accounts, probably lost $100+ million. Probably more like $200 to $300 million. I don't know how big Rocksteady is. I mean, I guess we could do some clunky math. Rocksteady employees. I don't know what their average salary would come out to, but if we said the average is like, it's going to be more expensive because they're in London. But if we say, it's 100,000 on average, when you factor in also the costs of the studio, the costs of healthcare, the costs of taxes, the costs of IT, everything, it might come out to around 100,000 a year. And then they basically did nothing for 9 years. I'd be upset too. I would call that a financial failure as well. And that's assuming this doesn't factor in the costs of outside contractors that were helping with development. This doesn't count the costs of marketing the game, which they spent a ton of money marketing the game. This doesn't factor in costs of, any surprising like upgrade costs in terms of licensing Unreal Engine or any of that other stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if this number is closer to like 300+ million. They maybe made 50 to 90 million off of sales. But now we're hearing stories of lots of refunds and stuff hitting. So there were reportedly plenty of refunds on Steam as well. So I would not be surprised if this game lost upwards of like $300 million for Warner Brothers. Which, how that is not a wake-up call to Warner Brothers, I don't know. But this is part of the trouble with studios that always are able to come up with excuses for it. Like anytime there's a game that's horrifically received, you should look at it and be like, okay, why did this not connect with fans? Why did fans not like this? And how can we learn from it and grow? But instead it seems like so much of it, and I won't get into too much, but there's been some statements and stuff from some of the people that have worked on this game, which basically dismiss the dislike of this game as either bigotry, which in some cases maybe it is. There are people that are just being nasty and horrible, but other people are like, nope, you were just unfair. You guys just haven't given the game a chance. You need to try it. The game's actually amazing. The combat system's fantastic. There's this and that. And that to me is why I don't think that we're going to see like a cyberpunk reworking of it. I mean, I just don't think we see that, because if the people that made the game don't think it's that bad and they can't see why people are not liking it, then there's just nothing that can be done. Yeah, I mean, they needed to sell millions and millions, and not to mention that there's added costs to this because they're going to be supporting this for at least a year. So, you know, it's not as simple as just releasing it and then moving on to the next game. Like, they're working on this for years to come, allegedly. But as of right now, they have 365 players in the game. I'm also not a mathematician, but this is a downward sloping line. Downward sloping. That's a big old yikes. Wow. It's like the last stream we talked about this. Somebody was like, Luke, you have more concurrent viewers than Suicide Squad has players. And I was like, really? And then it turns out it's true, because like, we do well on the stream clips. We don't tend to have a whole lot of people in the actual streams. We just don't. It's fine. I kind of prefer it because it means that we can be more like direct, and I can talk with you guys more directly. It's not as chaotic. It's not like those big streamers where it's just emojis flying by. You can't read any messages. So I kind of like it. But we literally, like, if you guys all went and booted up Suicide Squad, we would triple the number or quadruple the number of players instantaneously, you know, which is just freaking funny to me. So based on these estimations from these guys, if we take the median, which is usually roughly the most accurate way of finding it, let's say, you know, I don't know, maybe 140,000 copies on Steam. 140,000 is nothing to scoff at. You know, that's a nice chunk of change. 140,000 times 70. Well, actually, it's going to be less than 70 because Steam is going to take their cut. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think Steam's cut is 30%, right? So it's 70 times 0.7 because they take 30%, and then that's times, let's say, 140,000. So, you know, 6.8 million for an indie studio. That's fantastic. That's tremendous. But when your costs were most likely around 300 million, that's not great. Players on PlayStation, I'm sure there's even more that bought it over there. Maybe a couple 100,000 bought it over there. And so maybe, you know, this is, let's say if there's only a quarter of players are on Steam and the rest are on consoles. And so, you know, we can crank it up. I mean, we might be at 20 million. We might be at like 28 million. We're probably below 30 million all told in revenue. And then maybe, you know, a couple of $100,000 from cosmetics that people bought. There are a lot of people that bought the deluxe version. So that's a good point. Some people will be like, oh, well, they bought the $100 version. So it's actually a full 70. But even if we say every single one of those 140,000 copies on Steam paid for the $100 edition, it's still 10 million on PC. And, you know, still, if you try to give it the benefit of the doubt and you crank it and you say like, okay, and then that was only a quarter and the rest of the units sold on console, we're still only at $40 million for a game that cost hundreds of millions. Suicide Squad feels like a project that should have been canceled 2 years in. It seems like an idea that anybody could have come in and been like, this just doesn't seem like something people want. But this is the problem with executives and groups that refuse to take feedback from actual gamers and instead rely on feedback from people outside of the core industry or the player base. Because then you end up with this, which was perfectly avoidable. You could have asked any one of the people here in chat, and I'm guessing even the people that like this game a lot and have had good fun with it would have had lots of notes on why this doesn't work and what they would change and how they would shift it. And I agree. Like, I think a lot of this doesn't make sense, and it could have been avoided very easily. He took my thing.